Welcome to Physio-Lab and Library. Let us understand cardinal planes and axis of movement. Let us first understand the anatomical position. It is the standard reference position of the body which describes the location of structures. It is also known as anatomical position. It is also used as the position of reference for describing the anatomical planes and axis. It is the point of reference for all movements. It is a position of a human standing upright with feet together, hands at side and face looking forward, palm face forward with fingers straight and together, toes point forward. Let's talk about axis and planes of movement. A plane is an imaginary flat surface running through the body. Three planes that pass through the body in anatomical position are as follows: frontal plane, sagittal plane, and horizontal plane. An axis is an imaginary line at right angles to the plane about which the body rotates or spins. The three axes of rotation are sagittal axis, frontal axis, and vertical axis. So what is a coronal plane? Coronal plane, also known as frontal plane, it is oriented vertically. It passes parallel to the coronal suture of the skull. It divides the body into anterior or front or ventral and posterior or back or dorsal parts. The movement in the coronal plane occurs around sagittal axis. It is also known as the antero-posterior axis of rotation. It passes horizontally from posterior to anterior of the body. The movements that occur in the coronal plane around the sagittal axis are abduction and adduction at the hip joint, shoulder joint, and metacarpophalangeal joints. Lateral flexion at the spine, radial and ulnar deviation at the wrist joint, inversion and eversion at the foot. Sagittal plane, also known as longitudinal plane, is oriented vertically and right angles to the coronal plane. It passes parallel to the sagittal suture of the skull. It divides the body into left and right halves. The movement in sagittal plane occurs around coronal axis, also known as mediolateral axis of rotation. The coronal axis passes horizontally from left to right. The movements in the sagittal plane around the coronal axis are flexion and extension at spine, shoulder, elbow, wrist and hand, hip, knee and foot joints, dorsiflexion and plantarflexion at ankle joint. Horizontal plane is also known as transverse plane, axial plane or cross section. It is oriented parallel to the ground. and divides the body into superior and inferior parts. Superior parts are also called as cranial or top part, and inferior parts are also called as caudal or bottom parts. The movements in the horizontal plane occurs around vertical axis of rotation, which passes vertically from inferior to superior. The movements in the horizontal plane around the vertical axis of movement are rotation at spine, internal and external rotations at shoulder and hip joints, and pronation and supination at radioulnar joints.